Good evening, I'm Maurice Dubois.
I'm John Dickerson. We begin tonight with a classic question that has come to symbolize a crisis in American education. Why can't Johnny read?
The question has its roots in a best-selling book first published 70 years ago. We ask it again now after the release today of a troubling report that highlights an ongoing crisis.
It shows that 5 years after the COVID pandemic forced millions of kids out of their classrooms, many have yet to catch up. The average student is still nearly half a grade behind in reading, math too. One reason, long after schools reopened, many students are still skipping class. But it's not all bad news. Caitlin Huey-Burns tells us the report also points to areas where kids are doing well.
When you get a day off, what do you do with your day off?
Go to sleep.
We went to Kramer Middle School in Washington, D.C., where we met 8th grader Aiden Wiggins. He and his classmates spent about a year and a half in remote learning during the pandemic.
What do you think was the hardest thing in school after the pandemic?
I would say math.
Math. And why do you think?
Really, in quarantine, I really wasn't paying attention.
Aiden wasn't alone. New national test results show that not a single state scored above pre-pandemic levels in both reading and math. That's despite nearly $190 billion given to schools in federal pandemic relief funds. Mohammed Karoma teaches 8th grade English language arts at Kramer.
What kind of challenges do you think still exist?
We're still trying to fill in those gaps that they didn't get at the lower levels, because it's hard to grapple with an 8th grade text if you're on a lower reading level.
So a lot of kids just didn't have that foundational experience.
Indeed.
And a study out today from Harvard, Stanford, and Dartmouth cites a widespread rise in absenteeism, especially in high poverty districts.
The biggest thing is to just get them inside the building. Once we get them in the building, learning is going to happen.
But the study found some bright spots. More than 100 local school districts are performing better in math and reading than they were before the pandemic. Public schools in D.C. aren't there yet, but over the last 2 years, D.C. ranked first among states in terms of recovery in math and reading.
All right, STEM, who has STEM? Let's go.
Katrina Shelby is the principal at Kramer.
So how did you do it?
I started thinking, maybe I need to think about this differently. How can we make classroom sizes smaller, but give kids more opportunities to get remediation during the school day?
That includes what they call high-impact tutoring, which was successful in other districts, too.
So this is kind of like having a private tutor, but inside your classroom during school hours.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So it's just like a tutoring resource place, but they get it here. It's free to the students. It's free to the families.
D.C. also invested some of its pandemic funds in more teacher training, giving $1,000 stipends to some who completed courses. Success, says Principal Shelby, breeds success.
Giving kids that additional support in literacy and math didn't just impact how we were able to grow literacy skills, we also were able to reduce truancy by 20%. So in 1 year.
So they were seeing their own progress.
Yes.
In real time. That was
in
encouraging
real time,
them.
and it was encouraging them.
There's also a growing socioeconomic gap. The highest income districts are nearly 4 times more likely to have recovered in both math and reading than the lowest income districts.
Caitlin, you mentioned that the Education Recovery Scorecard cited absenteeism as a problem. That's really been persistent, hasn't it?
It has been. We heard from both the principal, the teacher at this school, and every expert we talked to say that chronic absenteeism is the issue here. It's just too high. Nationwide, it's at 29%, and in that D.C. district, it's at 44%. The basic underlying problem is you can't help students learn if they don't show up.
Well, Caitlin, that school in D.C. that you went to has a ban on cell phones, music to a lot of parents' ears, by the way. So how's that working out for them?
Indeed, and the teacher that we spoke to said that that has a positive effect. It obviously helps kids pay attention while they're in school. When they get home, that's a different story. But 8 states around the country, at least, have banned or restricted cell phones in their states, and 15 more are considering similar legislation.
Caitlin, the pandemic money is gone that went to help out schools. So what are even the ones that are performing well? What are they going to do now?
Well, Title I funding, which is funding for low-income districts, allows the states to set aside 3% of that money for tutoring programs, that high impact tutoring that we saw that has been having an effect. But only one state, Ohio, does so far. So experts that we talk to say that is a target. They also say to prioritize funding in state and local budgets for the programs that are working. Just because you had something funded with those federal dollars doesn't mean you can't find a way, they say, to keep those programs going, especially if they're seeing results.